Alright, hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry this video took so long. This is how you export your Honey Select 2 characters. So first of all, you're going to need these two programs here, Noesis and NinjaRipper. I'll put links in the description for these. So for Noesis, there's a plugin you need. It comes with NinjaRipper, so you're just going to drag this file here into here. Of course, I already have it. Alright, so we're going to hop into NinjaRipper here. So up here in the exe, you're going to want to find wherever your Honey Select 2 is installed. And we're going to select Studio Neo V2 here. The output directory can be whatever you want. And in settings here, I would have your force rip interval over here set to something pretty high, just because it could miss some of the files in your scene. Of course, your hotkeys can be whatever you want. Just make sure you know what this all one is selected to. So for me, it's just F9. So I'm gonna go ahead and run it here. All right, once you're in, you can go ahead and load up any one of your characters. I'm just gonna use this one here. Generally speaking, when it comes to the second version of the game, you want to use characters that are heavily modded, just because illusion items have all kinds of encryption, and they're generally pretty low poly as well. Just like with the last game, you can select any animation you want, and when you export it, it will keep this pose, or whatever pose it's in. I'm just going to use the T-pose to keep things simple. Make sure you have the full character in your screen here to make sure everything is rendering, and go ahead and hit F9. Okay, and with that out of the way, you can go ahead and exit, and now we're going to run Noesis. Alright, and just like last time, you're going to come through the file explorer here and find wherever you had it export to. So in this case, I just had it export to documents here. And it's going to be this folder here, whichever one you can drop down. Okay, and I'm just going to sort by size here. And first thing I would do is go through and export every mesh that you need. And this is going to vary from character to character. It mostly just depends on the outfit you're using. So I'll show you how to do this one here. We're going to go over here to export. And again, you can just select wherever you want to put it. I'm just going to make a new folder and just call it character, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. And we can call this boot. Looks like boot left, so you can do _L export. And this one's high poly, so it'll take a sec. Generally, the problem last time with UV maps not working correctly with Honey Select 1, that problem is mostly gone. It doesn't really matter which one you export anymore. Still, just look at the model and make sure that, you know, the UVs look correct and that, you know, you don't got all kinds of crazy patterns everywhere. Yeah, like this one. You could export this one, it would work fine. So let's do that. Call this tab. Sometimes it can be a little hard to identify what's what. So generally you're just gonna have to use your intuition. Like this is the same as this. The texture will work on both. It's just the way Noesis displays it. And yeah, with a lot of these, you're honestly just gonna have to use your intuition to figure out what it is. Like these, I can tell are the eyeballs, just because it's two half spheres. These would be the teeth, just because it kind of looks like teeth. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go through, export every model I need, and you can follow along with your character. And here we have the back of the boots. Do note that not all of them will be textured like this. This here is the body. This is going to be the dress. We already did the head. You'll see one like this. This is just another model of the head, just with makeup on it. You can export this if you want. This is the hair. Sometimes hairs will come in a bunch of different pieces. You're just gonna have to export all of them. Stockings, underwear, garter belt, gloves. Because my character doesn't have their mouth open, there's really no point in me exporting the tongue or the teeth. Eyelashes, ears, the hair inside the ears. This single hemisphere is the pupil. And unfortunately there is no eyebrow mesh, so we have to make that in Blender. Now for textures, this is where things get a bit tricky. The first thing I would do is to start off and go through and export the ones that are obvious, like this is clearly the dress. So I'll just export this as a PNG, call it dress. Afterwards we'll come back through and grab the ones that look confusing, like this. Gloves, stockings, garter belt, This is the ear. These look like the boots. Got the eyebrows. Got the underwear. Got the eyeball itself. Alright, and back to the top, and now I'll tell you about the confusing ones. So you're going to see this crazy green texture, kind of resembles the body texture from Honey Select 1. This is actually the specular map, and we're also going to use this as the color, and you'll see how later. So I'm just going to come up here and call this body. Now you're going to see one that looks like this. This is the iris. The pupil is not in this texture since you can change that in the game, and unfortunately they don't give you the texture for that. So that's also something we have to make in Blender. We can just call this the pupil. So this one is very important. Make sure to grab this one. This is actually where the skin color is hidden. It's just going to look like makeup on transparency. So I'm just going to call this makeup. We're going to use this one as the specular map for the head. So just call that head specular. You can grab this one if you'd like. We can use this to control how shiny different parts of the face are. So I'm just going to call this face roughness. The ones that look like this are the bump maps. I would not recommend grabbing these just because Blender really does not like bump maps, and it'll actually end up looking better without than with. This one here, this is going to be the eyelash texture. I think this one's modded, so it's going to be a little higher res than your average one, but regardless, it's going to look something like this. I would recommend, however, grabbing the bump map for the body, because there is a way to fix it if you have Photoshop. Alright, so you can see here, we just went through, exported a metric ton of files, and now we can finally hop into Blender. Alright, so in Blender, I would recommend just selecting everything with A, and pressing X to delete it, just so it cleans up our workspace here. Then you can come up here. We're going to use this collection to kind of sort everything. So I'm just going to call this character up here. Then to import your files, we're going to go up to here to File, Import, and then we export it as FBX. So you're going to select FBX. And by the way, if you don't have the option to import FBX, you can come up here to Preferences and make sure you have Import Export FBX enabled here in add-ons. So import FBX. Then I would recommend just going through and importing everything first before you even touch texturing. So I'm going to start with the body here. So body.fbx. You can just double click it, and it's pretty small. They generally import pretty small. I just like to come over here, scale everything up to 1, and then you can come up here and you can rename it just so you don't get confused, and name that to body. Next we can do the dress. So name this dress. Scale everything up to 1. Then we can do the boot. So boot. And sometimes you'll have this case where, especially with the shoes, it doesn't export both of the shoes. So basically what you just do is, I'm going to select the shoe, press Shift D, and you can press G to move it over to the other side. Then to mirror it across, you can press S, X, -1. And then you're just going to spend some time to position this correctly over the shoe or over the foot. And already that looks fine to me, just so long as we don't have any clipping like we do right there. Next we can do the stockings. So just call them stockings 111. We can do the gloves next, so search up gloves. Next we can do the belt. So just call this garter belt. Scale it up to 1. And you'll notice that I actually imported all of the body items first, the clothing and the body itself. And that's so I can actually go up here, create a new collection, and we can call this body. You can drag all of these items into this new collection, so just to keep everything nice and tidy. And then I would recommend just hiding this like this. We can create a new collection here, call this head. Make sure you have this selected, and then they'll automatically import into that collection. So we can do the head. Once again, scale this up to 1. Call this head. We're going to do the eyelashes next. call these lashes or whatever. Scale it up. We can do the hair. So call this hair. Scale it up. A lot of the times you'll get this situation where the hair is wrong direction. So I'll just come into front view here by clicking up here, and then R, Y, and ID. And that will rotate it into the correct orientation. Then you can move it around until it sits correctly on top of the head. All right, next we can do the eyeballs. So eyeballs. Call these eyeballs. Scale it up to 1. Alright, now I'm going to unhide the body once again. I'm going to select everything in the head here. I'm just going to pop into front view, move it up using G and Z. I'm just going to hide the hair here from the viewport. And we can scoot this back in side view, pressing G, and just finding it into the correct position roughly. And that right there looks fine to me. I'm going to re-enable the hair. And then we got to reposition the hair. So when you have accessories, you have to manually place them. So like in the case of the ears, scale these up, you can see it doesn't automatically place correctly. So I'm gonna make sure to import all parts of the ear and just select both of these. And then you're going to need to manually position this wherever it goes. And I'm just going to copy these on SX-1 to mirror it. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. For the eyebrows, we actually have to make its own mesh. So what I'm going to do is just hide all the outliers just to make it a little more easy to work with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into front view here, tab into edit mode by pressing tab. And I'm just going to select an area roughly where the eyebrow would be on the mesh. If you hold Control and right click, drag this kind of lasso. And you can just kind of select an area where you think the eyebrow might be. So that's the kind of shape you want to go for, maybe not this one here. So I can hold Shift and just deselect that one. And I might deselect these as well, since those are a little too far out. And what I can do is press Shift D, and this will duplicate that part of the mesh. Now I'm going to press P and separate by selection. All right, that's going to make this into its own mesh. Now we want to roughly position this above the eye. If you want to make it easier to work with, you can come over here and say set origin to geometry, and it'll let you rotate around its center. Okay, if you saw the last video, this part should be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and do the head texturing first. So I'm going to select the head here, pop into the shading workspace, and everything looks pink just because there are no textures yet. So go ahead and click this file button here. You're going to want to go search for wherever your character files are. So mine are here. We're going to want to select this one for the diffuse texture. And what you're going to want to do is come down here in color space and set it to a non-color. This will get the skin texture. I'm going to turn down the metallic. We can duplicate this and select this one. I'm just going to plug this directly into the material output so we can see what we're working with. I'm going to add a color ramp. I'm going to bring the black a little closer and then plug the principled back into the material output and then plug this into the specular. And you can check to see how this looks just with a point lamp. Next, I'm going to give it about 0.01 of subsurface scattering, then plug the color from this into the subsurface color so you don't lose any saturation. For the skin texture, I'm going to go ahead and hide the dress, and you're going to want to select this green one. And this is where all your detail is hidden. I'm going to add a color ramp, and I'm just going to flip the white and the black for the time being. Turn down the metallic all the way. Change this black to a kind of a desaturated red. And then with the white, try to get as close as you can to the skin tone with the face. Okay, I think for this case, this should be close enough, but you can spend however much time you want. I'm going to duplicate this by pressing Shift D, just plug it directly into the material output. Go and add a new color ramp. And once again, flip these two. That goes into the specular map. Now you can have something like this. I think this red might be a little too saturated. For the bump map, if we try to insert this, add a bump node, and then try to plug this into the normal, you can see what happens. It looks really bad. What you can do is just pop into your image editor of choice. I'm going to bring in the bump map. Make sure you add a black background. Then you can just merge these. If you do not have Photoshop, what you can do is just add a Gaussian blur and just blur it out until most of that weird artifacting is gone. If you do have Photoshop, a better way to do this is to go up to Filter, 3D, Generate Normal Map, and then just play around with these until you get a result. I'm going to call this Body Normal Map. Alright, and if you did use the first method, you can just replace this node. If you convert it to a normal map, you're going to want to add a normal map node. Plug that in. Bring in your normal map. Set it to non-color. I'm going to turn up the subsurface to 0.01. Plug the color into this color. For the eyebrows, I'm actually going to just hide all the hair here. And we actually only need one of these for now. Going to go into the material properties and remove this. Just create a new one. Going to tab into edit mode here and then click up here to go into front view. And I'm going to press U, project from view. And then we can just bring in the eyebrow here and plug the color into the alpha. Then you're going to want to come down here and change the blend mode to alpha blend. Going to UV editing. You're going to want to select the UV map here, scale it up. Going to rotate it 180 degrees. Alright, so that looks fine to me. Going to pop into shading here, and you can just change this to whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to make it black. I'm going to copy this across, S, X -1 to rotate it, and just move it across. If you want to be really precise, you can come into here, into the object properties, and just flip the X location, and then flip the Z and Y rotation. And then I'm going to turn down the specular all the way. The eyelashes are the same thing, so you can just copy this material, paste it here. Then instead of eyebrows, you just want to select your eyelashes. And then, as you can see here, the eyelashes are red, so I can just make that a color ramp node. The white all the way down. Alright, for the hair, just bring in your hair texture, plug it into the color, alpha goes into alpha, and for the hair you're actually going to want to select alpha clip. I'm going to turn down the specular, add a color ramp node, and I'm just going to play around with this until I get a hair color I want. And then I actually would recommend giving a little bit of metallic texture to the hair. For the pupils, like the eyeballs, and duplicate that mesh. And then I'm actually going to hide this for a second and just finish doing the eyeball material. So let's just take the roughness all the way down, turn the specular a lot. For the pupils, go and create its own material. New. I'm going to move the eyeballs back actually. Now you can bring in that pupil. It looks very strange for the time being. And you're going to want to come into the UV editing workspace and come into front view, select everything and just scale it down until the pupils are roughly the size you want. and make sure you come over here and select clip. Now I'm going to take this and plug it directly into the material output. I'm going to add a color ramp, squeeze this white all the way as close as it'll get here, but just enough to leave that feather on the edge. Now once again, come down here, alpha blend, and we can plug the color to the base color. I'm going to turn the roughness all the way down and the specular all the way down. I'm going to add a new color ramp, and this is how we're going to mess with the eye color. So you can just find an eye color you like. Alright, and after messing around with it, I managed to find something that I'm pretty happy with, and make sure to save. Now the hard part are the pupils. I'm going to add a mix RGB shader right there. Just plug it right in. Make this color 2 all the way black, or whatever color you want the pupils to be. Then I'm going to add a gradient texture and change the type from linear to spherical. And I'm once again just going to plug this into the material output to see what I'm doing. Add a texture coordinate node and plug the UV into the vector. Now add a mapping node. And this right here is going to be your pupil. So I'm going to turn the scale up even more than that. And just position this around maybe like 6, even 6.5. Position it roughly center. And then to change the fall off around, you can add a color ramp and you can slide this around. Now we're going to take the output of the color ramp and plug it into the factor. And you can see that gives us this. And then you're going to want to change the position until you get it just right. And play with this color ramp a little bit more. Then of course you can change this color here to whatever you want. Alright, and I am pretty happy with that. And everything else is just the same principle, so I'm going to time-lapse the rest of this. Okay, and this is the result. It is a little rough around the edges in some places, but I still think it looks pretty good. Make sure to drop any questions you have in the comments, and I will try to answer those to the best of my ability.